stand as we begin worship.
Hope
Hi guys, how are you? So, let's see. I have come with candy, okay? Because I like to have things be interactive, and I find that at this age grade, like age group and up to 45, candy usually gets people motivated to yell out answers. So that's good. I've got a lot of packets for you guys. And if you need more, I've got my rough drafts so I can run across and make more copies if you guys want to take them with you, share them with your friends who are not here, share them with friends who don't even go to youth, okay? Because tonight we're talking about mental health. So mental health is not just a Christian thing, it's for everybody. And adults, children alike. Like Pastor Dustin said, I am a licensed professional counselor. I work with CSB. My 9-to-5 job is with CSB. I'm also in private practice under Steve Booker, Pathfinders. And I also do emergency services, which adds an interesting twist because I get to see people really on their worst day. And there's something very humbling about sitting with someone who is just, whether they're suicidal, whether they're psychotic, or they just need help. And, a lot of times that can be, honestly, we've seen kids 4 years old and up. So, I see them in the ER and we try to get them the help that they need. So I love what I do. Been doing it for 12 years. There are always reasons why we get in this field. And so I've got, a history and a story, and likewise with just about everybody has a story, but I chose to use the things that I had been through to try to help people with the things that they're going through. So that's what drew me to mental health. First I'm going to start with, basically there is a stigma, and I believe that trends are moving towards that it's going away. But like 30 years ago, it was a huge thing to actually admit that you had to go see a counselor or a therapist, because nobody wanted to do that, because that meant you were what? Huh? Cray? Is that what you said? Yeah, it meant you had something wrong with you, right? So I know you guys are what, middle school and high school, right? Okay. So what are some of the words we think about when we think about someone who is in like mental health distress? Psycho. Right. Okay. Okay. We're going to get the candy rolling right here, okay? There you go. Okay. What other words? Anxiety, right? Who said that? There you go. Good catch. Okay, what are some of the more negative things that we think of when we think of someone who's got like mental health crisis going on? Like what do we, huh? Suicidal, which is, also like a negative thing. But like what are some of the harsh words we use? We hear someone's like had an incident or something, or they're just not acting right. We typically will, unstable, crazy. We use some harsh words about, circling around the mental health issues, okay? What do you think about when you think about someone who has a physical illness? Like say someone who's got cancer. What do you guys think about? What are some of the words that come up when you think about how you feel about someone who might have a physical illness that is not anything that they've done? Like heart disease, heart attack, stroke, cancer. What are some of the words that come up? Nothing? Sad, right? If I tell you that, my mother's had a stroke and she's in a wheelchair for the rest of her life, you might be like, wow, that's horrible. How do you deal with that? That's terrible. It's, you feel like you're compassionate towards them. You feel, more caring, right? So we deal with mental health issues a lot different than we deal with physical issues. And really, they're kind of in the same bucket because nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to have a mental health crisis, okay? No one wants to wind up in the ER. No one wants to look up a therapist. However, there's really, we're working towards, in my field, we're working towards taking away the stigma and taking away the shame, okay? Because needing help is not anything to be ashamed of. And it really isn't. And the step to not needing help is to try to stay ahead of that and to protect your mental health. So who can tell me what mental health is in general? Anybody? Crickets. Okay. So mental health is the emotional, the psychological, and the social well-being of a person. Okay. So in my field, we have something called the cognitive triangle. And so it's three sides, they're all connected, and it's basically feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. So how you feel affects your thoughts, and your thoughts affect your behavior. So if I get up in the morning and I feel like a loser, and I'm like, man, I can't do anything right, having a horrible hair day, nobody likes me. So I'm going to start feeling down about myself because I'm telling myself all these negative things. And when I feel down about myself, I'm not going to go out into the world and act like fantastic, right? I'm going to act like, like people are just like stepping over me. They don't need me in their lives. They don't like me. They don't make room for me, nothing. So with the cognitive triangle, when you can start thinking positive things about yourself, you tend to start feeling positive about yourself, and then you can treat yourself better. And that's why we like to talk about the cognitive triangle, okay? Because those three things are always connected. One side always touches the other two sides. And you guys taking notes? Cool. Okay, so anyway, also, when I went into grad school, which was like, 15 years ago maybe, there was also a big movement of saying that your physical well-being was very much tied in with your mental well-being, okay? And for a long time, we didn't teach that. When I was in school, when I was in grade school, it's like they taught how to eat healthy and be healthy and go out for sports and all this stuff. But we didn't talk about taking care of your mind. Didn't talk about taking care of your headspace. And through the years, we saw trends of, people who were physically fit were basically falling apart inside. So a movement came about where we started talking about the importance of mental health. And I'm really glad because it helps to take away the stigma of people seeking therapy or just people who want to take care of their mental health. So what kind of things do you guys do personally to keep yourselves feeling good? And I'm not talking about vitamins and eating healthy and stuff, but you swim. Okay. Because what does swimming do for you? Okay, all right. And it makes you feel good about like anything that you can achieve that you push yourself to do, and okay, so there you go. That was a poor throw, I'm sorry. Okay, what?
I do archery.
Archery? Really? Cool, all right. So how do you feel about yourself when you do well with that?
It makes me feel good about myself, like
Okay.
I'm doing something right to get me to how I'm
Right.
doing good in that.
Okay, and you're setting goals for yourself, right? Like if you totally go off the archery board and you hit your dad's car or something, to make the goal of try to stay with the board, right? Okay, good, that's good. Oh, sorry, it's under your chair. It was a test. Okay, so what other things can you do for your mental health that, like just in your house, like not even like, I don't want to say like exercise and stuff, but like what kind of healthy practices can you do to kind of keep yourself healthy? Okay, drawing is excellent, okay? And I see a lot of kids. I love to see kids in my practice. I love working with kids. And I always ask when I meet them for the first time, it's like, do you like to draw or do you like to paint? And I hear so many times that kids say, because everyone is caught up on like if they do it well or not. And they'll be like, no, I can't draw. And it's like when you draw just for yourself, it releases so much. I mean, you're putting emotion on the paper. You're putting, especially with colors and stuff, you can express how you're feeling. It's a fantastic creative way to make yourself feel better. Okay. Who else? Anyone has any other ideas on what to do for themselves? Okay. Yeah, exactly. Comedy? Yeah, I mean, comedy is good. When I have kids who are like down in the dumps, there you go. I typically, I'll ask them, what are they watching on TV? Well, I watch horror movies all the time. Well, that really stinks. So, I tell them, I try to get them to watch lighter things. Things will make them laugh. I'm going to talk in a little bit about screen time. I'm not 100% down on social media, okay? A lot of people sometimes are. I believe, like anything, if you use things in moderation and you pick out the good that is there, there's good to be had, okay? And social media has its good points. So, all right. So, okay, I'm going to tie in some scriptures here and there. I picked out a few that I wanted. I was talking to Pastor Dustin about it, and he gave me the Ecclesiastes 4:9. Solomon wrote, "Two people are better than one, for then they help each other succeed. If one falls, the other can reach out for help." Okay? So, what do you guys get from that scripture? What do you think that? Okay? We don't live on an island, okay? And we don't live on a mountaintop. We live with each other. We're basically wired for companionship. Okay, God has made us to want to be with other people. And, companionship, of course, family, friends are very important. So when we're struggling, how important is it to let someone know that you're having a hard time? Is it important? Yeah, okay. I saw a head nod. There you go. So, all right. What does it look like when you ask someone for help? Is it hard? Yeah, okay. It might be easier for girls. I think we typically think like it's harder for guys to say to another guy, I'm having a hard time, okay? But we also know that because guys and girls are wired differently, so guys tend to like keep things more bottled down, and they see it more. I don't want to stereotype too much, but I think most guys are brought up to not be so much in touch with their feelings as it is acceptable for girls to be, okay? And so that's why, yes, I have more clients who are female than males, but that doesn't mean that the guys aren't hurting, okay? So basically, it's okay to ask for help. Colossians 3:16 says, "Teach and counsel each other with all the wisdom he gives." So there's a lot of learned people out there ready and willing to help. And the thing is, what one friend has gone through in life, they can take that, and God can take that and work through them to use for the good of someone else. So like, when I was a kid, my parents were separated several different times. And so later, when I was in high school, I kind of knew what that felt like. So I had friends who were going through that in their personal life for the first time. So I was able to kind of walk through them, walk through that with them a little bit and guide them. Again, back in the day, we're talking like a long time ago. Nobody went to a therapist, and if someone went to a therapist, they didn't talk about it, okay? These days, I think the stigma is lowered a lot, and so a lot of times, sometimes I have girls come in and they'll be like, well, I want to talk to someone. I'll be like, what's going on? It's like, well, I don't know. My best friend has a therapist, and she said it was really cool to have someone to talk to, so, I'm here for that too. And I'm like, okay. Whatever helps is great. A lot of kids come from homes where they don't feel free to talk about stuff that's going on because maybe their parents are just of the mindset that they shouldn't need help. And then sometimes they just come from families that they don't really get heard. And so, making mental health and counselors and therapists and everything accessible to kids is very important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the reasons why people, why they would need to see a therapist. So I know Olivia said one thing earlier. You said anxiety? Were you the one who said it? Yeah, okay. What's another reason that someone might be struggling? Depression, right, okay. Depression, anxiety, feeling isolated. What's a big thing that has come to light in the last like 10 years of school? What happens a lot at school? Bullying, right? So, there you go. Sorry. And what else?
I was gonna say suicidal thoughts a lot when people are on social media way too much.
Right, okay. Suicidal thoughts, that's a big thing, okay. So, let's see, what else? Family issues, parents going through a divorce, a parent dies, a sibling dies, that's a big one. Sometimes, just if someone knows someone who had a loss or a horrible accident or something like that, we call that secondary PTSD, where someone, like, if my best friend, her father dies, like, I could get very affected by that, even though it wasn't my loss directly, okay? So there's lots of reasons. And again, it's so important to be able to bolster up your mental health because we don't live on the hilltops. We have valleys in our lives. And, a normal life does not like stay up in the treetops all the time and everything is great. We have days where we're down. We might know why we're down, we might not know. But a normal influx of up and down is what's, that's what's normal. We see it all throughout the Bible. We see, Job was like, he was down for a while. But, most of the people that we read about in the Bible had good days, they had bad days. And their stories are all very important for us to basically learn from. So, let's see. Okay, so depression. Who knows what depression is? Anybody? Take a stab at it. Is it like when you're super happy? Okay, so depression is like a long-standing state of sadness, feeling like you're under a cloud. You might not even know why you're depressed. We have something called situational depression, which is, again, if you've had a loss in your family, that you can put your finger on why you're sad. So sometimes there's such thing as chemical depression, where your brain just doesn't fire enough dopamine. Dopamine is one of the feel-good chemicals that keeps us feeling good and keeps us moving forward, okay? So sometimes there is a need for medication. A lot of times, kids your age and stuff, a lot of times it is just the need to be heard. If you have someone that you can talk to, someone that you feel like you're being heard, you're being cared for, a lot of times you can work through your depression in that way, okay? Learning coping skills. We have something called mindfulness, which, anyone here heard about mindfulness ever? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so mindfulness is being present in, like, just in the space you're in and using all of your senses. So being aware of the people that are around you at that moment, the room that you're in, not thinking about the future, not worrying about the past. And it's kind of hard to do, but there are certain mindfulness exercises that you can actually look up and you can practice it, and it helps to keep you focused. And it's very important to know how to focus because you'll use that in schoolwork, you'll use that with jobs, you'll use that at night when your mind is racing and you can't fall asleep. You can practice how to focus through mindfulness techniques. You can look them up. I'm not going to get too much into all of that because there's a lot of different things. So with anxiety, anybody know what anxiety is? No? I don't believe that. Yeah? Yeah. Anxiety is like the feeling that something's going to happen that's not going to be good, okay? Anxiety could be that you're just worried about going outdoors because, a tree limb might fall on you. You're worried about going into a store because there's a lot of people there. People are going to stare at you. Anxiety about going to school. You might say something wrong. You might have the wrong answer for the teacher, anything like that. Some people have anxiety and they can't put their finger on it. Their heart will race. They always feel like they just cannot relax. It's a horrible feeling, and anxiety is one of the mental health illnesses or mental health for lack of a better word, description, I think, that is mentioned in the Bible many, many times, okay? The Bible tells us over and over, do not be anxious, okay? And to give it to God. And yeah, it's easy to say that. It's harder to do. But I can tell you honestly, if you can master that, if you learn how to pray and give your anxieties and give your worries and put them at the foot of the cross and realize that God's already got your story like it's all written out. So there's a lot of comfort in knowing that there's nothing that you can worry about that's really going to be affected by all the worry you put into it. Okay, now there's certain things. I mean, is anxiety always bad? No. Okay. Who said no? I want to throw some candy at you. There you go. I got to work on that. Okay. So how is anxiety not always bad? What's an example of when anxiety could be good? Right, because that would be bad, right? Okay, all right. Yeah, honestly, I always say anxiety helps keep us alive, right? If I'm walking down the train tracks and a train's coming, if I don't care, so, walking across the parking lot at Food Lion, if I'm not looking where I'm going, I have to have a little bit of anxiety to get myself alive to the store, right? So getting in a car, not that you have to be anxious about it, but we have to take certain precautions. We should be aware. So, you want to check your mirrors, you want to put your seatbelt on and all of that. So a little bit of anxiety is good. It's when anxiety is running your life that it is really not a good thing. When you're lying awake at night at 2 in the morning and you're just anxious about the test the next day, or you're anxious about what he said about you the other day, or you're anxious about your parents fighting, whatever it might be, that's when anxiety is not good, if you're living in it like that. So there are a lot of techniques and coping skills to learn how to manage your symptoms of anxiety. Relaxation things, basic things, deep breathing. Okay, so everybody, I want you all to sit up, okay? Put your butt in the bend of the chair, and feet flat on the floor. All right, this is great. This is like what it's like to be a teacher when they listen. Okay, now I want you guys to really breathe in, and first put your hand on right above your navel, okay? And I want you to breathe in, but unlike what you probably think breathing in looks like, when you breathe in, I want your hand to move out because I want you to fill your gut, all right? You're going to do abdominal breathing, okay? So go ahead and breathe in. It's kind of hard to do because we all want to inhale and make our skinny gut, right? So we're going to do that, and now when you breathe out, I want you to make sure that abdominal wall goes in. Okay? It's harder to do than you think, all right? But doing that if you could do it, honestly, start with 30 seconds. You can do it anywhere. You could do it when you're standing in line at Walmart. You can do it in school when you're getting anxious. You can do it really just about anywhere. I do it usually when I'm in bed before I fall asleep because I typically have problems sleeping. So breathing in deep, not to the point where you're racing up your heart, but just breathing in deep and getting oxygen to all avenues of your arteries and everything. It helps to calm everything down. It helps you to focus. So that's always a good go-to. Also, there's what we call, I don't know what they call it, finger breathing or something. But basically when you trace up a finger, you're breathing in. So it's so you can do that. So you do that in school, they might look at you a little funny. There's also tapping, and tapping has been a proven technique of how to relax. So if you're having a panic attack or you're getting kind of anxious, a lot of times tapping on your collarbone is a good way. Some people tap on their forehead, on their temple, but I don't know why or how, but it will release tension, okay? Exercise is also a regular exercise regime is really good for releasing tension and anxiety. It's also very good for depression. Coloring, okay? You guys know that in the last couple of years, the coloring books that are not just like your basic coloring books for 3-year-olds, right? So any of you guys enjoy coloring? Yeah, good, okay. No guys? No? Okay. Well, coloring is actually a really good thing to do. And I think that they discovered somewhere, I don't know, about 10 years ago, the back and forth motion of your hand. So like when you're painting, if you're doing that, or just coloring, it releases, it has your brain basically release it. It's the limbic, help me out here, Susan. It stimulates a part of your brain that releases dopamine. So it actually does help. It's not just that you're mindlessly coloring. You're actually doing a coping technique that is helping you to fight against depression and anxiety. Okay, and it kicks up your ability to problem solve and organize. So your brain is kind of working when you're coloring, okay? So don't ever think that coloring is wasted activity. It's not. Psalm 34:17 says, "The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles." So in listening to that, it's, calling out to God and letting God know that you're struggling. Yes, he knows that without you asking. But God loves when we ask him for help, right? So if we're struggling with something, yeah, we can keep it to ourselves because we know that God knows our inner thoughts and he hears our inner voice. But when we actually put words to it and we say, God, I'm really having a hard time right now. I don't know why I feel like this, or I don't know why I'm thinking like this. And we ask him. It's amazing how God shows up when we put words to it. And I'm a walking testimony. I mean, in this room right now, I think Vicky's probably the only person who knows my story, which is for another youth group meeting sometime. But God showed up major in my life when I really needed him. And I wouldn't be standing here talking to you guys if I hadn't asked for help so many years ago. So I'm just going to put that out there. Okay. Who has ever heard of basically you are what you eat? Yeah, right? Okay. So that's true with almost every single thing of what you do with your life. Okay? What you put in is what you get out. So you do sports, right? Okay. So if you never worked out, if you never practiced, if you never pitched, you just go out in the ball field, are you going to be good? No. Okay. How do you feel after you've worked out? I mean, you're tired and everything, but how do you? Right. Okay. And your mindset's good, and it's good to clear your mind and everything. Okay. Same thing with. Okay, let's talk for a minute about food. Like, who likes junk food? I know I'm tossing you guys candy like seals, but okay. So when you eat a whole lot of junk food, okay, you go on like a Saturday night binge, and all you do is like drink soda and sugary stuff and candy, and I mean, how are you going to feel? Honestly, how are you going to feel? Right? Yeah, you're going to feel lousy, okay? Plus, your body is probably, in a way, you're going to want to have more of the sugary stuff, even though you feel lousy, right? Because you're getting your body used to a certain thing, okay? That's true with almost everything. So when we put good things in, we usually get good things out. We feel good. That's exercise. That's good, wholesome things that we like. We talk about how we feel, how we're, conversing with other people. If all we do is talk trash about people, if all we do is gossip, if all we do is listen to harsh music, okay? If all we do is, just really keep ourselves in a very negative mindset, we're going to feel lousy. We're going to feel as if, that's where we live. If we turn our thoughts and turn our activities to positive things, we're going to feel better. We're going to crave to be better people. It's like when you start going to a gym, the first couple of days, you're probably like dragging yourself in. After a few weeks, if you don't go, you're going to feel like you're missing something because your body is used to doing the good stuff, and your body's going to want to do more good stuff. Okay, that's true with eating healthy food, drinking lots of water, and keeping your thoughts good. That's part of mental health. So let's talk about music, okay? Because I'm going to hit all the things that you guys don't want to talk about tonight. So who can tell me how music affects your thoughts?
Kind of like clears your head of what you're already thinking and puts more different thoughts and like mindset and music.
Right, okay, because you're now thinking about the words of the lyrics that you're listening to. So what happens if you're listening to lyrics that are really hateful, spiteful, kick your puppy kind of thing? Like, what are you gonna start thinking about? Right. So, yeah, I could have said harsher things, but yeah, I mean, well, that's pretty harsh. So, but yeah, I mean, so what you put in is what you're gonna yield, right? That's what you're gonna get out as a return. So, who likes to listen to? And I'm not down on all. Like, I'm not gonna start like, oh, you have to listen to Christian music all the time, because I mean, I love Motown music. Okay, I love Motown. I was raised on it. I love it. Okay, I brought up two boys. I raised two boys, and of course, this was like 15 years ago. They were both teenagers, and they were listening to all kinds of rap music and all kinds of really negative stuff and bad stuff and things like that. And and my kids, I mean, I'll be honest, because if they were here, they would tell you that they're not saved. Okay, I'm not sure what kind of faith. They've both been through horrific things in their life. They should have faith, and but they don't. Okay, and I'm not blaming the music choice on it, but I'm just saying that they listen to music that is putting in a lot of negative stuff. And they're both fine. They're nice young men. Okay, they're polite. They see my friends on the street. They give them big hugs and kisses and stuff. But I see a trend with young people. When I get someone in my office, teenager, and they're depressed, I'll ask questions. I'll ask, like, what are you putting in your body? What are you eating? What are you listening to? What kind of movies are you watching? How are you sleeping at night? Are you always on your phone? Kind of thing. And a lot of times, my advice or my suggestions to them to feel better are not the popular ones. Okay. And I don't tell, like, I'll get a kid in my office and I don't say, like, oh, you have to listen to Toby Mac, because, I mean, that's not really what I do. However, I will question, like, when they say, like, oh, I just listened to, whatever rapper it might be or whatever. And I'll be like, well, let's pull up one of those songs. Let's listen to it. And so we listen to it. And the kid's like, yeah, it's really cool, And whatever kind of lyrics I'm catching, I'll be like, wow, that's like some pretty dark stuff. And they're like, yeah, man, it's like really cool. It really gets me going and stuff. And it's like, so my job as a therapist is try to like make these kids realize that if they're listening to this on a loop, day in and day out, all the time, these are negative messages. Even if they're saying like, yeah, he's talking about killing his mother, but I'm not going to go kill my mother. I like my mom, And it's like, but you're listening to these messages that are so just steeped in negativity. It's steeped in darkness. It's steeped in stuff that, there's so much darkness in this world. Do you really have to plug it in through your AirPods and listen to it all the time? And I try to get, and again, I'm not like, here, listen to, like, Mercy Me. And, I'm not going to do that to a kid who's not a Christian. I might, but I tend not to. But I will suggest that they listen to music for like a week with no lyrics. Like anything. I don't care if it's whale sounds. Like, just don't listen to any kind of lyrics, because the lyrics put the messages in there. So even if you want a good beat, just take the lyrics out. And then see how your mood is after you've listened to this stuff, after you fall asleep with this stuff, classical or bluegrass or whatever. But just take the lyrics out, because the lyrics are suggestive. Everything we see in life is suggestive. So it's what we surround ourselves with that we are putting in, even when we don't think it's caustic or toxic. It is, because it's seeping in, okay? So who here likes Christian music? Okay. Who do you like, Livia?
I like
Okay, all right. Okay. Who else? Who else likes Christian music? What do you like? Okay. All right. So, I mean, when I was a new Christian, I was cleaning houses, and I had like an old, like, this is before smartphones and stuff, and headphones and everything. So I had a little, like a player that I, carried around with me and stuff, a radio. And the only station, and I mean, like, I really was a new Christian. Like, I had people, like, knocking at my door telling me I should read the Bible and stuff, and I was like, yeah, okay. But I was just entertaining the idea that, I mean, I always believed in God, but to be a Christian, to have this relationship with Christ was a new concept to me. Because I was raised thinking that you needed a middleman. We needed a priest. We needed, people to tell us about God. We couldn't really go to God ourselves, okay? And the only radio station that I could get down in Wachapreek, because I had a lot of houses down there, was it's still around, I think, but it's not K-Love, but it was another Christian station. And I listened to it because the music caught my ear. And it was either that or ESR, and I really couldn't handle ESR. So I started listening to this station. And I was introduced to, like, Third Day and Casting Crowns, and, Mercy Me was brand new, and Toby Mac, and things like that. And I was listening to this stuff. And then in between, the DJs come on, and they talk about positive things, and they're talking about, like the love of God, and once in a while they'll have someone who calls in, like, yeah, my husband left me with 5 kids, and, my dog died, and, will you pray for me? And the DJ starts praying, and I'm cleaning people's houses, and I'm listening to this stuff all day long. And honestly, I mean, I can honestly say that listening to that radio station day in and day out for probably a year, that edified my soul, and it put stuff in there that I was in the throes of my own stuff. I mean, I was separated. My kid had an accident. He was debilitated for a while, and I was very alone. I considered going back to New Jersey, where my family is, because I was only here for a couple of years when all that stuff happened, and I was cleaning houses. I mean, who like, no one really wants to grow up to clean houses. Okay, I was doing that because I needed to put food on the table. And I was going home at the end of the day, and I found myself, like, looking into these groups. And this is before, again, I couldn't just pull this stuff up on the internet at the time. So I was, like, seeking this Christian music, Stephen Curtis Chapman and stuff like that. And I was listening to this stuff and these messages. And one thing I really figured out quickly was I wasn't depressed when I listened to Christian music. I wasn't, like, thinking about the love of my life that left, or this happened, or these people don't talk to me. I was thinking about, like, all these positive messages. And it's not that Christian music is just flowery stuff. Christian music talks about hard times. It talks about being in the valleys. Listen to contemporary Christian music. It's good stuff. And they talk about a whole bunch of life situations and life valleys and things like that. It's not all hyped up, happy stuff. But it's always promising, and it's always encouraging, and that's what's amazing about Christian music. So all that to say is, when you listen to music, be careful what you're listening to, because it is the message, it is the stuff that you put in that really kind of fills your heart. And you want to keep your heart filled with good stuff, okay? Because the heart and the mind is very close. And what goes in here, you feel here, and what's in here, you have your thoughts coming from your head. And remember, your thoughts are connected to your feelings, and that affects how you behave. So, okay. What's another thing I might see a young person for in my therapy office? You guys probably have friends who struggle with some of this stuff. Like, what about self-harm? Anybody familiar with that? Okay. I mean, I work closely with Miss Boyle here, and when I'm in the ER and she calls me up and she'll say, hey, I got this person in the ER, and it's not always a kid, okay? It's a lot of kids, but sometimes it's adults, and she'll be like, oh, she's a cutter and this and that, and So, I mean, self-harm, who knows what self-harm is when I say self-harm? Okay. All right. So it can be anything, okay? It could be cutting, it could be burning, it could be insertion, like people put things in their skin. It could be anything that is causing you pain. I mean, hair pulling, like there's all kinds of different forms. Is it a coping skill? Yeah, it's a coping skill. Some people self-harm. The most popular is, of course, cutting. And some people cut because they want to feel, and then some people will say that they cut because they don't want to feel. So it's open to interpretation, okay? There is no right or wrong reason why people cut. Does it make them feel any better? They'll say they do, but that's kind of like saying, I'm nervous, so I want to have a cigarette. Well, a cigarette, like for 2 seconds, you might feel calmer, but actually nicotine speeds everything up, and nicotine makes you feel horrible, okay? So it is a coping skill. It's just an unhealthy coping skill. It's an unhealthy coping skill like drugs or doing anything else that's unhealthy, okay? So when I see kids who self-harm, it is not always a suicidal gesture, okay? It's usually what? If it's not suicidal, it's like, why might, like, if I go tell my mom, I'm a 14-year-old kid, right? And I tell my mom, like, yeah, I've been cutting. What might she say? The first thing she's going to say is, do you want to die, or is it suicidal? And I'll be like, no, I don't know why I do it, but I do it. And, it's a cry for help, okay? It means something inside of me is broken. Something I am trying to deal with and trying to process. It could be old trauma, it could be new trauma, it could be the fear of trauma, it could be something I'm going through, depression, anxiety, intense feelings, don't know how to deal with it. I think we see self-harm mostly in the age group of teenagers because there's so much hormone stuff going on that you guys are, really, like you're legit like crazy, right? And also, you're also so triggered by your friends. So like if I have 2 friends who are doing this and they're like trying to convince me like, yeah, this is really cool, you should try it. So it's like, now I'm like, oh yeah, because I kind of want to be accepted. I want to be involved with what they're doing. I want to be in the know. Also, teens kind of feed off each other sometimes, okay? It's a bad thing most of the time, but, sometimes it can be a good thing. But, your friends are very important to you. So what one kid is doing, sometimes it kind of goes through like a trend. And so the bottom line is, when someone is doing self-harm, it is a cry for help. It's a cry for, some people say, well, she just does it for attention. That might be. Well, why does she need attention? Why does she feel that she needs more attention? What is going on? So it's something that needs to be listened to and it needs to be dealt with. Let's see. You guys have any questions so far? You're being very good. You waiting for me to throw candy at you? No? Okay. Okay. What other kind of issues might I see someone in the therapy office with? Everyone's so quiet. Okay. What about substance abuse? Okay. So, it's like the big elephant in the room, right? Because everyone is kind of affected by it because we see it in the news every day. We see it probably in the schools every day, whether we actually see it or we just know about it, or we know people who are doing it, whether it's adults, kids, whatever. What's a big substance that is going around, it's been going around for a while? Anything? Huh? Well, nicotine, yeah. Yeah, nicotine's a drug, yeah. So that was like, 30 years ago, that was like the big thing that like high schoolers would do. They would smoke and stuff. What is a more deadly substance that is going around? Huh? What? Fentanyl, right. Fentanyl is an opioid. Opioids are like a group of medications, drugs that there's heroin, there's opioids, there's oxycontins, there's fentanyl. carfentanil. There's a whole bunch of things. And they are very deadly, okay? And they're laced in with other things as well. So they pop up in the strangest places. And, so substance abuse is a big deal. What has happened, and you guys at your age, you probably know this, but what has happened in the last couple of years that a lot of people are kind of like sitting back saying, it's okay, we're doing this now because it's allowed? Yeah, okay. So it's time to throw some candy. So who said marijuana? Oh, Vicky. Vicky said marijuana. Okay. Yeah, Susan, there you go. Who else? Who else said it? Oh, there you go. Okay. Okay. So it became legal. Who cares? I mean, what's been legal for like years and years and years, but you can't do it every day because of your age, and I can't do it every day because I'm of age, but I wouldn't have a job. I mean, liquor is legal, but if I sat around drinking all day, I wouldn't be here, right? I probably wouldn't be anywhere, really. I'd probably be in the ER with Miss Spoil, but yeah. But just because they made it legal doesn't mean they made it safe, and it doesn't mean that it's good for you, okay? It's still a drug. And cannabis use, cannabis is marijuana, that's what we call it, cannabis use disorder. A lot of kids are believing, see, when I was your age, it was like, oh, it was natural because it grew, because it was a weed. That's what they call it, weed. So, and I hate to say it, but it probably was healthier back then than it is now, because now we're seeing so many synthetic versions of it, and there's nothing healthy about it, and there's nothing natural about it. And what we're seeing is there's such a higher level of THC that's in the marijuana today than there was 30, 40 years ago. And I was telling Pastor Dustin this the other night. So the marijuana has changed. What hasn't changed is the teenage brain. So God's making the teenage brain the same way he made the teenage brain 2,000 years ago. It's the same brain, okay? So what's different now is that kids who are smoking or vaping THC, it's waking up parts of the brain that are still very underdeveloped, because you guys' brains, I hate to tell you, but your brains are you're like ping pong balls, okay? Like, you know what a brain looks like with the ridges and everything? Okay, yeah, your brains are like ping pong balls right now. You don't have your ridges yet, okay? So your brain is gonna keep growing till you're about, 25? She's like, no, I don't know. I think 25, it's like 25, something like that, until the human brain is fully formed, okay? So now you're pumping a whole lot of THC in it, maybe you're like 15, 16, even 17 years old, and you are lighting up parts of your brain that it doesn't even know what to do. And what we're seeing in the ER, and we're seeing a lot of it actually, is, psychotic episodes with kids, whether it's brief psychosis, waking up schizophrenia, and like you can be genetically predisposed to having schizophrenia. Schizophrenia can come from a lot of different things in your life, but when you're smoking a whole lot of pot, you're making yourself predisposed to having a schizophrenic break. And that is really, really scary. Recently, we had an episode where a kid, healthy, normal, happy kid, was vaping a whole lot, smoking a whole lot, and came in and speaking like total just gibberish. And and it's heartbreaking. I mean, I'm talking to the parents because I'm there working with them, and I'm like, has he ever been like this before? And they're like, no, he's never been like that before. And so, we trace back, and it's linked to that. And there's all kinds of research that is now getting done. It's probably like $1 late. What's the saying? Thank you. Yeah, because right now there's like so many teenagers who really have it in their head that it's okay. It's okay to smoke a lot of pot. It's okay to vape. It's okay to do all this, and it's not. Yeah, it's like playing Russian roulette. You might do that, and you might not be affected, but chances are you're going to have some fallout from it. Okay, and the the bottom line is, like, no one smokes pot and then says, I'm going to clean the house, right? Because it just, like, it takes away all of your, yeah, I see that. It takes away all of your, level of, like, enthusiasm for anything. I mean, literally, like, you just kind of sit around. There was a great commercial a couple of years ago. I loved it. It was two guys sitting in a basement of the one guy's mother's house, and they're passing a joint back and forth, and they're like 30 years old, and they're just like, hey man, what are you going to do today? I don't know. I mean, it's like, and it's sad, but I mean, people think like, oh yeah, I want to smoke the pot because it's legal, and it's this and that, and at least it's not heroin, and it's not crack, and yeah, okay, it's not, but it's really not good for your makeup. So, that's my little public service announcement about that. But, so again, what you put in is what you get out. If you want to be productive, you want to be tuned in, you want to be aware. And, all of you are gifts from God, okay? Your life is a gift from God. And you've been put on this earth, you've been put in your families, you've been put in this place for a purpose. And I love that we've got this many kids in the youth group. And I guess, I don't know if there's normally, I know this is a special event, but I mean, do you normally have more kids who come to youth? Yeah, and that's great. Because when I was involved with the youth many, many years ago, our numbers were, sometimes they were good and sometimes they weren't good. And it's just really encouraging to see young people, here, like working on their faith, living in their faith, just learning about their faith and stuff like that. I wish I had that at your age, I really do. So you just have to be aware of the things that you do for yourself, because your mental health is everything. If your body looks fantastic and you're grade A athlete and you're built up and your muscles and all of this, if your head's not right, then it's like you've got a computer with nothing, there's no innards in it, okay? There's nothing there. There's nothing that's going to fire up. So you've got to take care of your mental health. Okay, I'd like to talk a minute about suicide, all right? So, we had a couple, we've had several actually in the last few years here on the shore, and I see people in the ER all the time who, that's one of the main reasons I see them, is that they're suicidal. Either they've attempted and they actually did something, or they are thinking of it and they reached out for help. So, let me ask you, how does suicide affect your lives? Like, how do you, like, if you hear about whether it's a family member or a friend who's had a family member, you hear someone's father died, that's one thing. How does it affect you when you hear someone actually took their own life? What are some thoughts you might have? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And you wonder, like, how did someone get to that point that they thought that was a good solution, right? So, okay. So one thing I heard a long time ago that I like saying, but suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, okay? And now granted, I mean, sometimes people will take their lives if they have chronic pain, and that's not a temporary problem, of course, okay? Or sometimes someone might feel suicidal if they've lost a child, because that's not a temporary problem. But most of the things that when people impulsively take their lives, it's because they're not giving the time to think, what if? Like a jump ahead, like 5 years, is this problem going to still be a big problem in my life? And not giving the mindset in that way and just acting on impulse is, it's terrible. It's a terrible thing that someone would actually just impulsively do something like that. Now, when you're saved, what does the Bible tell us about when we give our lives to Christ? Like, what's the biggest thing? What do we get when we give our lives to Christ? What is the big payoff? Right, okay, all right. But is it just about eternal life? It's about a whole different way of living, right? It's about getting blessings every day. I mean, we hear stories about people on their deathbed when they give their life to Christ, and, really great, and I'm glad that they do that, and so that they will be in heaven with God. That's wonderful. But what did they miss out in life? Like for their maybe 16 years or 28 years or 85 years, they missed out all that life here on earth living in a godly way. Because living in a godly way is really much more healthy than living in an ungodly way, okay? So when we accept Christ, basically we're getting life over death, right? Like we're moving away from death, we're moving into life. So now you take someone who has given their life to Christ, but they're depressed. And they feel like they just can't get out from under this boulder, this cloud that they're living in. And they can't see a way out. And it actually turns more into like a mental health issue, a mental health illness, where they start having these dark thoughts, okay? Because a lot of questions come up. Put it this way, I do intakes. An intake is someone comes in, they want services, I sit and I spend like an hour or so with them and I take all information. One of the questions we always ask is, have you ever been suicidal or are you suicidal now? I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, oh, I would totally kill myself, but I don't want to go to hell. So it's like, so I'm sitting there, little Miss Christian, and I'm like, I mean, like, I want to evangelize, and I want to talk about Christ and dying on the cross, and he died for everything, but it's like, I don't want to give this person like a green light, say, you can kill yourself because it's okay. I don't want to do that, so I don't. Okay, I abstain. However, when someone asks me personally, not in my office, but if, a friend or whatever, a family member, because I was raised to think that when you kill yourself, you go right to hell, because I was raised Catholic, and that's what Catholics teach, okay? I think some other denominations might teach that as well. However, when I became a Baptist, well, no, I didn't become a Baptist, but when I started going here, and I started learning about having a relationship with Christ, giving my life to Christ, and all of that, and I started learning about what it's like to actually live in a godly way. And my life turned so around. And I realized that, Christ died for everything. He didn't just die for like these sins and not these sins. So yes, the Bible says that we're not supposed to take a life, and that would be a sin. However, when someone is so despondent and so lost that they think that suicide is the only way that they can get relief, then I believe, and I think a lot of scholarly, faith-filled people believe, that Christ died for that sin as well. And I personally don't believe that someone who sees that as a way out goes to hell, okay? Because he died for every sin. So, but the good thing is that there is help, and we are fighting in the mental health field. We are fighting really hard to make awareness about suicide. We're trying to, I'm also a CIT instructor, so I train police officers to deal with mental health issues. So like when they come up on someone who's maybe having a schizophrenic break or someone who's suicidal, they don't just like pull their gun out and tell them to get down on the ground. They start to actually have a dialogue with them. They try to have a conversation with them. It's an excellent training. It's not just here on the shore. It's nationwide, and it stands for Crisis Intervention Training. And so when I'm instructing these officers how to learn how to dialogue about suicide and everything, we basically we take away the stigma of what suicide is, because that could be anyone's mom, that could be anyone's son, it could be anyone's sister, okay? I remember hearing about an uncle of mine who killed himself when I was I think I was 11. And it's the first time I ever heard of anyone that I knew who had killed himself. And it was like all hush-hush, and it was like, I overheard my mom talking on the phone with my dad. And I was like, the first thing I thought, because of how I was raised, was, wow, he's in hell now, you know? It's like, didn't matter. He went to church all the time. It's like, he's in hell. And it was like, wow, it's like, first he was really, really sad. Then he jumped off a bridge. And now he's in hell. It's like, I mean, that's like, that whole picture is just like so dark. And, you know, the bottom line is like someone who is thinking about suicide, we need to make an awareness of it. There has to be a movement of recognizing that this could be anyone's thoughts. It could be anyone's family member who's dealing with something of that nature. So it's really hard to ask someone that you care about if they're thinking about killing themselves, okay? I had a training once that we actually had to turn to someone and say, you know, are you thinking about killing yourself? We couldn't soften it. We couldn't say, are you thinking, or like, you know, first you want to say like, are you sad? We couldn't say that. We couldn't say, are you thinking about hurting yourself? No, we had to say the word kill. We had to say that. Or suicide. We had to say, are you thinking of ending your life with suicide? And to be able to say that to someone that you don't know well is kind of easy to say it. I mean, I say it all the time in the ER when I'm seeing people in the ER. If I was looking at my brother, who I'm worried about because maybe his wife left and took the cat and whatever, and I'm thinking like he's been hanging out in the house all the time, he's not talking to anybody anymore, I really have to have this conversation with him. It's hard to talk to someone that you care about and say, are you thinking of hurting or killing yourself? It's really hard to say those words. And I think it's more of that we don't want to hear the answer because then we got to do something, right? And that gets messy. Because then it's like, oh, I don't want help. It's like, no, you got to get help, and you know, and it's all that. However, when the person hears us ask that question, a whole bunch of stuff goes off in them because now they feel like, wow, someone knows that I'm not in a good place. Someone knows that I'm hurting. Someone knows that I need help, and I just haven't been able to get the help for myself. And it's real important to be able to get used to saying that and asking those questions and checking in with each other. And one thing Pastor Dustin said the other night was that you guys, you know, you have tools. Like we, in mental health field, we say we have a toolbox, okay? And we have all these little tools. We got coping skills, and we've got this and that, and little squishy balls and everything. It's all in our toolbox. So you guys have the biggest tool that anybody would ever need, and that's your faith in God. Because when I have a client in my office and they're talking about things like suicide and they're saying they're depressed and they're saying that they don't know how to get out from under this stuff, I'll ask. I'll be like, you know, and we're not really supposed to say these things, well, but I do. But it's like, do you have any faith in God? And when they say yes, it's like, whew, that's great, because like my job just got so much easier, because now we can talk about God things, right? But when they say no, and I have a lot of Wiccans, and I have a lot of atheists, and I have a lot of like people who are just like nice people, good people, but they have no faith in God, and it just makes my job so much harder, because now I've got to try to equip them with stuff that God didn't make us equipped with, okay? Because God put, you know, I don't know if you guys ever heard, but like there's a way of saying, you know, God put a hole in your heart. Wake up, wake up. God put a God-shaped hole in your heart, and the only thing that can fill it is God, okay? So when I'm, as a therapist, I'm trying to get someone to, you know, get over their depression and manage their anxiety and stuff, and they have no faith in God, it's like, it's kind of like having a car with no wheels and trying to take it to a store. It's just not going to work. I mean, I can try to help them and stuff, but the bottom line is, as a Christian, I truly believe that God needs us to need Him to have a good life. And so, anyway, any questions? You're all so quiet. Okay. All right. So, I want you guys to, you know, again, what I was getting at is Pastor Dustin was saying that you guys have the ability to pray for each other. And I mean, you could tell each other you're praying for each other, or you don't have to say it because the guys might want to say like, hey, I'm praying for you, bud, but that's fine. But I mean, the thing is you can do it. I mean, that's the great thing about prayer, right? You can pray for someone you don't even have to know. So it's not like, you have to wear a t-shirt, like I'm praying for Bob today, like no one really cares. So you could just do it. And that is one of the greatest tools that we have. So I want you guys to take on the challenge of praying for one other person in this group, in this thing that you're at, this lock-in thing. And I want you to commit to that, I want you to put that person on your daily prayer list, and I don't care if it's like a 4-sentence prayer. I don't care if it's a half-hour prayer. I want you to lift one other person up in prayer. And further the challenge, I want you to make it a person that you're not super close to. So maybe it's the person that you never really talk to when you're here. Or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's one of the youth leaders or something like that. But I want you to put it on your heart to pray for the person that you would least likely pray for. And because God calls us to do that. And, I have an ex-husband. And I know that God wants me to pray for him, and I do, and it's hard, but I mean, that's, God uses him, I know, to make a better Christian out of me, and to dig real deep down and to pray for people that I don't normally would really pray for, and that's what we're called to do. So I want you guys to think about that and to do that. And remember, what you put in is what you get out. So your music, your movies, food, activities, your friends, you're hanging out with friends who aren't doing good things, be careful. Because you might think that you're going to lead them to Christ, but chances are they're going to take you away. And that's what the world wants, okay? That's what the enemy wants from you. And when you come out of things like this lock-in thing, or even just come in a weekly youth group and everything, you've got to be careful, because when you are a faith-loving, Jesus freak kind of a kid, when you walk out, the devil's all over that, because it makes you a prize, okay? The devil doesn't want to go after someone who is already doing bad things, right? The devil really wants to get someone who is walking with Christ, because that is like, that's pay grade for him. So you've always got to keep your eyes up and watch what you're doing, who you're hanging out with, what you're doing with your life, and try to do right. And when you can't do right, ask someone for help. All right? Got any questions? So who can tell me anything about mental health? He said I could talk here all night, so you guys are like, you're in here for, 6 o'clock tomorrow night? So, basically, what is mental health? Come on, I just talked for like 8 hours. Right, well-being of your mind and body and how it all interacts and everything. Right, excellent. So, who can tell me what the cognitive triangle is? Right, good. All right. Who else can tell me the cognitive triangle? Just in case you didn't hear it. You.
The triangle of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and your behavior, which everything affects the other.
Right. Excellent. Okay. Got to throw something at you. Here. Ah. Good. Okay. So, who wants to turn to someone and say, are you thinking about killing yourself? Okay. All right. Yeah, it's hard to say. It is hard to say. Okay. Sometimes it's even harder to hear the answers. Okay. But I don't think there's one person who's ever taken their life that someone didn't honestly know that there was something wrong. So, you guys have been great. I appreciate you giving me the time and the opportunity to come and talk to you guys. And I have lots of information up here. There's there's one of these for each of you, okay? So this is a packet. You've got Bible verses according to like how you might be feeling. Like when you're in sorrow, it's John 14. When you feel down and out, it's Romans 8. So that's the first sheet. There's another sheet of some helpful coping tactics to get yourself out of the doldrums or how to relax. So there's packets here. I want each of you guys to take one of them. This is very helpful. This is suicide hotline stuff I put together. Who's heard of 988? Okay, it's just like 911. They launched it in July, I think. It's nationwide. It's basically a suicide hotline, the way you would call 911 if there's an accident. If you're feeling suicidal, you call 988. And you get connected to a hotline person, but they will localize it. So like if I'm calling from Anancock, they're going to connect me to someone in Accomack County to talk to, okay? I'm not going to be talking to someone like in California or something like that. There's also the text hotline suicide. So if you text HOME to 741-741, that's also where you can just text if you're having suicidal thoughts or you're depressed. And there's Teen to Teen, which I like. They launched that a few years ago. If you text teen, to the number is here, I'm not going to say the number, you get connected with a teenager who has been trained to talk to teenagers, okay? Don't use it as a dating site, okay? They're on the West Coast, so you're not going to connect with anyone great. And, but basically, you're talking to a teenager who understands, because teenagers understand teenager things, okay? So you only get the teenager between 4 and 10 Pacific time, okay? So Dustin can help you with the Pacific time thing. However, 24 hours a day, if you do that, you get an adult. So you can get an adult anytime, but if you want the teen, it's 4 to 10 Pacific time. So you have that. There's a lot of these, so you each take one, but also, you know, if there are extras, give them to the kids who aren't here or bring them to school or whatever. Leave one in the bathroom at school, something like that, okay? Because it's good information. And then this is just a little bit about anxiety. I just ran off a few of these, but if anyone wants more, because there aren't enough to go around for everybody, but I can certainly make copies. I have my, I've got my originals that I can just run across the parking lot right now and make some more. So if you want, that's about anxiety. Okay? So that's about all I have. I'm leaving the candy for you guys, okay? But I ask that you don't pelt it at each other, okay? So, yeah. So thank you very much for your time. So.